Welcome to a new episode of Cheaters Always Cheat. Like, subscribe, and share to stay connected.
It's been a long time since that incident, and I haven't really shared this with anyone in my current life. Tonight I have some good wine, and I feel like letting my fingers do the talking. Back then, I thought I had found the perfect woman. We met during our last year of college at a party, and we instantly clicked. She was a stunning blonde with a beautiful tan, and she could have been a model, like someone similar to Kate Upton. She had all these amazing qualities. She was kind, compassionate, a good listener, and had an active social life with lots of friends. Our friend groups merged seamlessly over the 3 years we knew each other, and some of our friends even started dating each other. Those were some of the best times of my life. I was pursuing a post-grad degree in finance, while she had a degree in contractual law. We both ended up being successful in our respective fields, but let me tell you, I wasn't too shabby in the looks department either. I'm 5'11" and weighed around 190 pounds. I enjoyed going to the gym and staying fit. I may not have been a super athlete, but let's just say I had a good physique. However, despite my appearance, I was always pretty shy and hadn't been in many relationships before meeting her. We were completely smitten the first time we met. We spent the entire night talking and couldn't get enough of each other. From there, we started texting, talking on the phone every day, and going on weekly dates. About a year later, when I got my new job, she moved in with me. Her family was amazing, and I got along especially well with her mother, although her father was a bit distant with everyone. It was a whirlwind romance, filled with incredible overseas vacations, hiking adventures, and luxurious trips. After 2.5 incredibly happy years, I decided to propose to her. And guess what? She said, yes. I was on cloud 9. She took charge of all the wedding planning, and we started envisioning our future together, buying a house, having children, and going on unforgettable family vacations. We were excited about all the wonderful things awaiting us. And then it happened. One evening when we both got home to our apartment, I noticed she was acting a bit distant. It struck me immediately, because we had always been very affectionate with each other. At first it happened about once a week for the first month after the proposal, but then it started happening more frequently. I probably wouldn't have thought much of it, except that I used to listen to a lot of Reddit stories on YouTube. So, I decided to wait and observe. These moments of her ignoring me would only last a couple of hours, and then she would go back to being her normal self. However, after 6 months, with the wedding planned for a year later, she started acting this way almost every night. Our bed life was still great, and my relationship with her parents remained strong. But during Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, we lived just north of D.C., she was distant and standoffish towards me in front of her mother. So her mom was really observant. She pulled her daughter aside to have a talk, and I could hear them arguing. After they exchanged some intense but quiet words, they rejoined the rest of the family and acted like nothing had happened. I thought I could ask her about it later, so I did, but she didn't want to talk about it and asked me to wait until we got home to discuss it. I agreed because I love her deeply and believed we could overcome anything. Her mom looked just like her, but older. She had the same stunning appearance, except for a few gray hairs in her long, thick blonde hair. This detail becomes important later. When we got home, I brought up the issue again, but she still didn't want to talk about it. After pushing her for a week, she finally admitted that a guy at her job was trying to get closer to her. She wanted to be honest, so she showed me her phone. As I looked through it, I noticed that all the texts from the times when she was distant from me had been deleted. There was nothing suspicious in the texts, but I did go into her phone settings and turned on the location tracker, because we had the same phone plan. Honestly, I thought it would reassure me that she wasn't doing anything wrong. Well, turns out I was mistaken. On the second weekend after Thanksgiving, she had a company Christmas party. I had planned to go with her, but I got hit with food poisoning and had to cancel. Her friend came to pick her up from our apartment since they were planning to have a wild night out and had a designated driver. I told her to have a great time and that I'd see her in the morning. So there I was, throwing up my insides and barely able to leave the toilet for more than 30 minutes. Despite feeling miserable, I grabbed my phone and kept an eye on her location. First, she was at a restaurant, then at the party venue, and later at a bar. None of this worried me until I saw her phone stop at a downtown hotel. At that point, I was feeling awful in more ways than one. I was projectile vomiting from both ends and feeling emotionally drained. Exhaustion finally took over, and I fell asleep around 2 a.m. When I woke up at 7 a.m., I saw that she was still at the hotel. So around noon, she finally comes back home, and I'm feeling better. She showers me with affection, and I casually bring up the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her whereabouts. She tells me about the restaurant, party, and bar, but then claims she went to her friend's place to crash for the night. That was the first lie. Over the next 3 months, she starts working later and later, 3 to 4 days a week. As I begin to question her about it, she becomes increasingly defensive. One evening, when my fiancé didn't come home until late, I talked to her mom. I asked her mom about their Thanksgiving conversation, and she confessed that she suspected her daughter might be cheating on our relationship based on how she interpreted her body language. Her mom also mentioned that their weekly text conversations had become more distant and less frequent. With all these thoughts and suspicions swirling in my head, I decided to keep them to myself. 2 weeks later, something happened at work. I got assigned a new project that required me to fly to the Midwest from Monday to Friday for the next 5 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. On top of that, it came with a salary increase. When I shared the news with my fiancé, she seemed genuinely happy for me. Little did I know that her excitement might not have been for the same reasons as mine. So, I went online and purchased 4 motion-activated spy cameras for our apartment. I strategically placed one in the living room entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one that overlooked our hallway. These cameras were really small and connected to a hidden internet network so they couldn't be detected on our regular Wi-Fi network. I made sure to set up a password to secure the cameras, and then I just waited, keeping a watchful eye. During my first week away, she had her girlfriends over for 2 nights and never had to work late. However, on the 3rd night, a guy came over, and that made me furious. I was sitting in my hotel room, screaming at the screen and using every possible insult against her. They ended up going all the way, first on the couch and then in our bed. She contorted herself in ways I didn't even know were possible. The worst part was when I called her while watching them in action. She heard her phone ringing, signaled him to pause, and answered the call. I asked why she was out of breath, and she said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call ended, she went right back to doing the dirty. When I finally returned home on Friday evening, I ignored her and went straight to bed. Early on Saturday, I woke up and went cycling without even realizing how far I was going. I was so upset that I ended up biking over 50 miles from our apartment. My longest ride before that was only 30 miles, but that day I managed to go 105.6 miles. When I returned, completely exhausted, I took a shower. Later that evening, she and I went out with our friends, had a good time, and consumed quite a bit of alcohol. Is it considered an act of breaking up when the person you're about to break up with is completely unaware? I was feeling overwhelmed inside. Emotions of heartbreak, anger, rage, and betrayal were swirling around in my heart and mind. It hurt so much because I loved her deeply. It was hard to believe that she, who used to be so attentive, seemed completely unaware of what I was going through. Finally, I opened up to one of our mutual friends, and he revealed that they all knew about the situation for months. I was shocked to hear that they had been aware, yet nobody bothered to say a single word to me. That's why they gradually stopped inviting us to hang out with them. Looking back, I realized that about 3 months earlier, the invitations became fewer and fewer for me. So I decided to make an effort to win her back. The following weekend, I planned an entire weekend filled with spoiling her in every possible way. We went out for fancy dinners, indulged in pampering, massages, and heartfelt conversations about our future plans and my deep love for her. I could sense that I was making progress when, after her 4th glass of wine, she started to cry, and it became clear that the guilt was surfacing. I asked her what was bothering her, but every time she tried to speak, she would get choked up. So I reassured her that if there was something in her past or a conflict in her mind that she needed to discuss, I was more than willing to listen, and if forgiveness was necessary, I was ready to forgive and move forward. However, the only words she managed to say were how much she loved me. It was painful to hear that from her, especially because I had 4 separate videos of her and the other guy having closeness in our apartment. During the following 8 weeks of my trips to the Midwest, which ended up lasting for 10 weeks in total, I recorded over 41 hours of her being close with the person I later found out was her coworker. Interestingly, she never had to work late once while I was away. I made an effort every weekend to be extra attentive, but with each passing week, she became more and more distant. After witnessing this for 8 weeks, I reached my breaking point and came up with a 12-step plan to break free. The first step was to gather evidence of her behavior. Then I needed to get her out of the way to execute my plan, so I came up with the idea of a 2-week getaway trip for us to an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. She was thrilled about it. However, a week before the trip, I claimed that I couldn't go and suggested she take a friend instead. I knew it was over when she showed no disappointment in my cancellation. Little did she know, I had already arranged for her co-worker to accompany her on the trip. Next, I needed to terminate our apartment lease, which conveniently expired 3 days into her trip. Since I was the sole signer on the lease, it was within my control. Additionally, I had to find a job in another town. Luckily, the company I had been assisting in the Midwest offered me a job with a slight salary increase. Finally, I had to find a new place to live, which I managed to secure in the aforementioned location. When she's gone, here's what I plan to do. Take her to the airport and return home to pack all her belongings on the same day. On Saturday, get a new phone number, change my phone and email, cancel all social media accounts. On Monday, completely separate our finances by withdrawing all money from our joint accounts, closing them, and putting her share in an envelope packed with her things. Also on Monday, arrange for movers to pack up all my belongings and have them shipped out west. I would take all her belongings to her mother's house, which was about 600 miles away. Thankfully, everything she owned fit in the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. From Tuesday to Saturday, I would give the evidence to her mother and start my new life. I wanted to make sure I didn't do anything illegal, so I made sure nothing of hers went missing. It was incredibly difficult to pack up all her things neatly, and I've never cried so hard in my life. I've read countless stories on Reddit about significant others promising to change after being caught, but they never really do. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move forward, but she never did. She came close on 2 occasions, but her secret was too difficult for her to reveal. On Tuesday morning, I left our apartment north of D.C. for the final time. It took me 10 hours to reach her mom's house. What happened when I arrived at her mom's house caught me off guard. I got to her mom's house around 8 in the evening. Since I showed up without prior notice, I thought it would surprise her. Since they lived in a gated community, I had to buzz her house from the front gate. As I drove up, she was waiting for me outside. As soon as I approached her, I could see that she had been crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she hugged me while sobbing. She told me that she suspected her husband was cheating on her with a younger, slimmer, and more attractive woman. I was completely stunned and just held her for about 10 minutes. Her tears and runny nose soaked my right shoulder. Once she finally composed herself, I asked if we could go inside and talk. We went in, and I inquired about her husband's whereabouts. She mentioned that he claimed to be going fishing with his friends at a remote cabin an hour away. Then she added, "He hates fishing." She shared all the signs she had picked up on, and it seemed like it had been going on for about a year. So we did a bit of research and found a credit card charge for a luxurious 5-star hotel that was only 20 minutes away. A call later confirmed that her husband was indeed there, having a 4-night rendezvous with his mistress. 2 peas in a pod, I said. She responded with confusion, and I repeated, 2 peas in a pod. I explained that her husband was cheating on her and our daughter was cheating on me. That's why I came here to drop off her belongings and move out. I showed her the evidence I had compiled in a binder, with screen captures of everything. After flipping through the first few pages of the evidence, she looked at me in disbelief. We embraced each other and cried for a solid 30 minutes. Then she told me to stop crying and suggested that we drown our sorrows by drinking 3 bottles of Moscato and fooling around in every room of the house. She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine and headed out to their private pool deck. She asked me if I was joining her out there or if I wanted to seek some revenge. Now, I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to get too explicit. But that night, and for the following 3 days, we had love nonstop. I explored every part of her beautiful body, and we must have reached climax together at least 25 times during that period. Once those days came to an end, we bid a passionate farewell, and I drove off to my new destination. She kept me updated on everything that happened when my now ex-fiancé returned. The day my fiancé returned was unforgettable. I had canceled my phone that morning, so when she landed and tried to call for a ride, it showed that the phone was disconnected. It turned out she had her lover give her a ride home. He dropped her off and left. When she arrived at the door, a couple she didn't recognize, new tenants, answered, and she freaked out. She made numerous attempts to call me, but since my number was no longer active, she couldn't reach me. She ended up staying with her girlfriends for a while, as her coworker was already married. In her panic, she called her mom, who informed her that I had come down and delivered all her belongings, including her money, which was now 600 miles away. Her mom didn't mention that she had been close with me more in 3 days than my fiancé and I had been in the last 6 months. However, she did reveal that she knew about her cheating on me and that I had found a new job, a new place to live, and a new career far away from her and our so-called friends. Her mother also mentioned that she was separating from her father due to infidelity. It seems she cried for days and even took a week off from work, but unfortunately, she sought solace in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never disclosed my whereabouts to her. I had completely severed ties with that chapter of my life. The only connection I still had to that past was through my fiancé's mom, and she has kept our secret to this day. My fiancé was ghosted big time. Update. When it comes to the timing of the events that allowed me to leave her, a lot of it was incredibly fortunate. The lease ending, finding a job, and the phone plan coming to an end all happened at the right moment. If any of these things had been different, the outcome could have been very different as well. Now, let's talk about what happened afterwards. My ex-fiancé's mother and I stayed in touch for several months because we both experienced the loss of our relationships and sought a sort of revenge against our significant others. However, neither of our respective partners found out about what had transpired between my ex-fiancé's mother and me. After 7 months in my new location, my ex-fiancé's mother eventually came to visit me. But I want to clarify that, much to the disappointment of many of you, we only talked. We both felt regret for what had happened between us, recognizing that it was a result of the past and the intensity of the moment, many intense moments, to be exact. She mentioned that her daughter knew she knew my whereabouts and was very upset that she wouldn't reveal my location. She asked if she could tell my ex-fiancé where I was and provide her with a way to contact me. However, I requested that she refrain from informing her, because I had moved on to my new life. Ex-fiancé's mother and I had lengthy conversations about the possibility of her and her significant other reconciling and working things out. She shared that her husband was deeply remorseful and confessed everything. It was overwhelming for her, and she asked him how he planned to regain her trust. In an effort to be transparent, he provided her with all his digital passwords and allowed her to see every hurtful action he had ever taken against their marriage. Ex-fiancé's mother was filled with anger, but she acknowledged his genuine efforts to repair their relationship. She mentioned that forgiveness would take time, but rebuilding trust would require even more. What made him snap back to reality was when she confronted him about the affair and presented him with evidence of what their daughter had done to me. I should also note that ex-fiancé's mother was an extraordinary woman in every imaginable way. Additionally, she made it clear that if he ever strayed outside the bounds of their marriage again, she would reserve the right to do the same. He caught on to the word again and asked her to clarify. She revealed that as soon as she discovered his infidelity, she had a fling with the first eligible guy she came across. This revelation devastated him. Ex-fiance's mother shared that they both cried a lot and decided to separate temporarily, allowing each other time to gather their thoughts and determine if they wanted to fight for their marriage. Eventually, they sought marriage counseling and, as of May 2020, they are still together. Now, as for my ex-fiancée, she was devastated by what I had done to her. When she finally went to her parents' place to collect her belongings, she was confronted with evidence of the affair, which left her extremely embarrassed. Ex-fiancé's mother had to edit the binder, removing inappropriate pictures to spare her father from seeing them. Nevertheless, my ex was crushed. It wasn't until months later that she discovered her mother had my contact information. She begged her mother for it, causing significant strain in their relationship. However, her mother also warned her that if she attempted to find me or contact me, I would release all the evidence permanently on the internet. This insistence from my ex-fiancé to obtain my information is what ultimately led her to come and see me. She was also upset about her parents going through difficulties in their marriage. According to her, her ex-fiancé was depressed for several months and sought counseling to cope with it. As soon as she returned from her parents' place in Louisville, Kentucky, she ended the affair with her co-worker and started looking for a new job. Recently, in December 2019, I learned that she got married and now has 2 beautiful twin daughters with a good man. According to her mother, she still resides in the D.C. area and works from home, thoroughly enjoying her new life. I'm glad she was able to turn things around and find happiness again. I recently decided to get rid of all the incriminating evidence I had on my ex-fiancé because I didn't want to be the type of person who holds someone hostage for the rest of their life. I asked her mother to convey this message to my ex-fiancé. If I were in her shoes and received such bombshell information, it would have caused me many sleepless nights. As for myself, well, let's just say I am satisfied with my current life. Ex-fiancé's mother and I talked every few months initially, but now we talk once, maybe twice a year. Usually it's a short note, updating each other on life's little changes. The only question that remains unanswered for me is that if ex-fiancé's mother and her husband were able to repair their marriage, would it have been possible for ex-fiancé and I to have repaired ours? But I never gave it the chance. One can only speculate. Our lives are on vastly different planes now.